Well, hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. Coste Apetrea is a Swedish musician, guitarist, and composer of Romanian heritage. He is highly regarded as among progressive guitarists worldwide. Costa began his career by joining progressive band Samla Mammas Manna in 1972 and would record 3 albums worth of material with the band during the 1970s. After leaving the band, Costo would enjoy a fruitful collaboration with Finnish guitarist Jukka Tolonen, recording 7 albums over the period 1977 to 2003. He has toured widely across Europe, composed music for TV and film, and built his own recording studio. Mr. Apetrea has also collaborated with many artists worldwide, including Stefan Nilsson and Anders Paulsson, and over the years he has released 6 solo albums. A reunion in 1990 with Samla Mammas Manna led to a couple of more albums, as well as tours to Japan, US, Europe, Canada, and Russia. My guest is still writing, producing, teaching, and playing live. Well, welcome, Costa.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here and taking time out to do this. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
I was born here in Sweden and on the west coast, a little town called Falkenberg. Yeah.
Okay.
1950.
Do you have some fond childhood memories growing up there?
Yeah, I have a lot of memories. It was, in the 50s, it was such a beautiful little fishing town, and great beaches and everything. So yeah.
Okay. How about
very
early
nice,
on?
very nice. Good place to grow up, actually.
Good place to grow up. Let me ask you this: everybody at that time left their houses unlocked and things like that. There wasn't a lot of security.
Yeah, definitely. It was like Swedish was Sweden was an after the Second World War, Sweden didn't participate, so Sweden benefited. But it was before that in the 30s. Sweden was quite a poor country. It wasn't a rich country. So in the 50s, it was not like it was like everybody had the same standard. So like where I grew up, maybe there was one family had a car, was one family that had a TV set. So all the kids would go there and watch TV for half an hour, and then we would be out in the streets, or parks rather.
Uh-huh.
That was fun.
Well, how about early on? Do you remember hearing music in the house?
Yeah. The music that everybody would relate to would be American music in the 50s. It would be Elvis. It would be Little Richard. I remember especially Little Richard that really blew my mind.
Yeah.
When I was maybe 9 or so. And I'd never heard anybody sing like that. And that was really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard that story too about Little Richard being an inspiration. Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Well, how about were either one of your parents musicians or?
Yeah, my mother was very musical. She was from Austria, and she could sing like everything, all the folk music from there, all these Vienna easy operettes and things. She would sing all the time. I would always think she would sing so much that I would think would be a drag because all the time. And, I think she would be happier if she could have been an artist or so. But
okay.
That wasn't the situation at that time.
At that time, do you think you got some of the musical gene from your mom?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was not from my dad, but I must say, if you listen to Romanian music, especially some of the gypsy bands, you can say, wow, the way they play. So I grew up listening to that too.
Right.
But
But it wasn't. Your dad, it was
It was
interesting that
country, his homeland, the traditional
right.
music.
It's interesting you said that about your mom. It wasn't what mothers, a career that they were housewives. They were taking care of the children. So it
Yeah,
wasn't one that they
exactly.
pursued. Yeah, they
Exactly.
just yes, exact at that time. You're right. Well, was the guitar the first instrument that you learned how to play?
Uh, yeah, probably. Yeah. It was my brother. He had a friend, and his friend had a German guitar called Kent or something like that, and a Swedish amp and
Oh,
an electric guitar looked like a Stratocaster, but
okay.
much more knobs and through a lot of little bling blings. And anyhow, he could play a lot of songs, and they would play in our basement. And I had never heard an electric guitar. And when they started to play, I was, what?
Yeah.
And I was just opening the door and listening. And when they went, I would borrow his guitar. And
Oh,
he didn't know that at that time. But when they caught me, he said, "It's okay." My brother was, "What are you doing?" No, it's all right. Let him play. Can I do that? Yeah. So that's how it
uh, well,
from because
How old were you around that time? How old
10
were you?
maybe 10.
Well, can you remember the first single or album that you bought that you got?
Yeah. Oh, it must have been some Beatles. Maybe She Loves You. One of those, or the
Okay,
Stones. I
okay,
had I had I had some Beatles and some Stones. Stones made a single with a Chuck Berry tune called "Come On, Come
yeah,
On." I wanna
yeah,
see you, baby. Come on,
right,
down,
right,
down, down, down. Down. Yeah,
right.
maybe that was some of it.
Some of the early. Well, we'll
But
talk about some other artists and musicians that you were into at that time.
yeah, I was into. I was listening to all of them, growing up in my early teens. I was listening, of course, to the Beatles and the Stones, and the whole British and American pop scene, and mostly from the radio that would come here. But then I got to buy. I remember buying the first record. I remember. Uh, that I really, that really blew my mind.
Mm.
That wasn't the first record I bought, but the first record. Uh, I was in a neighbor town, a bigger town from the little place I was living in. I was going through a warehouse, and in the entrance was the record department,
Okay.
and they were playing Red House by Jimi Hendrix, and it was
Oh,
brand new. Nobody had heard of him, and I
uh,
was, what
mm,
is that?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
just ran and I bought the record.
uh-huh,
And
yeah.
on the bus back home, I lost it.
Oh, yeah. How did you lose it?
Just being, yeah, I bought different things, and I just I don't know. It was just great. I was
Well,
13. Uh, was-
well, somebody else had a gift,
and
probably.
yeah, yeah, really, yeah. A friend of mine had it, so I recorded it on tape. But that's a funny story, because he got brought over by a British bass player of the Animals, this Chas Chandler. Did you
Yes,
know
yeah,
that? Jimi
yeah,
Hendrix?
yeah.
And one of the first countries he went to abroad was Sweden.
Is that right? Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So he performed here. They had released "Hey Joe,"
Uh-huh.
and that was a smash hit, and nobody knew who he was. That they knew that song because it had been on Swedish TV.
Yeah.
And it so happens that a very good friend of mine, he was a record producer at that time. This is a weird story, and he heard Jimi Hendrix, and they were distributors for Polydor at that time, and Polydor had Jimi Hendrix. So his the record company he worked with, he made sure that they would release Jimi Hendrix, and he made the first concerts with Hendrix here in Sweden. It's
Ah,
a bit fun.
well, that's what that
Also,
leads.
and then he became friends with him, and he's got some really weird stories.
Oh, well, I
But
like weird
that's another
stories.
story. It's a long one. The only connection with that today for me is that I'm producing a record with this guy. He just turned 80. You know, like he's the same age as Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
Hendrix was born 43, and Bill is also born
Wow.
43.
Is that
Yeah.
right? You know,
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that, about early on some of the musicians or people in the business that you admired, and you never thought that you would one day work with them. You know, is that kind of surreal?
Yeah. Yeah, that happened. You know, at that time, the later part of the 60s,
Mhm.
that was an extremely creative period, or
Yeah.
you know, England, the States, and Sweden, I would say, because we had there was a great guitarist. He formed a band called Made in Sweden.
Okay.
His name was George Vedenius, and I really admired the way he played. You know, he was like 7, 8 years older than me, and that's a lot in that age. And I used to go and watch them play. But he then went over to the States and started. He joined Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Yes, right.
And toured, and he came back and started the band over again in the end of the 70s, and he became my friend, and we started he plays on my first solo album, actually. And
Oh,
he's one of my very close friends. He's a great guitar. He played with everybody, you know, in your country, you know, Aretha Franklin, Simon and Garfunkel. uh,
oh.
you know, I could go on. He,
You could name them all. Well,
yeah,
speaking of
he
concert,
did all of them. But
yeah.
you know,
Speaking of concerts, was Hendrix one of the first concerts you saw, or what was the first? Do
no,
you remember?
I never saw him because I
Oh,
was
you
living
didn't.
in his place. I was
Okay.
going to, and you know,
Yeah.
his, you know, his period of fame was really very short. It was like
Sure. Yeah.
4 years,
Right. Right. Right.
4 years, and
Right.
uh, during that time, I was going to high school, and was far away from Stockholm.
Okay. Well, what
So
was the one?
I never
What
got to see him,
you didn't see?
unfortunately.
What was one of the first concerts that you went to, that you attended?
Some Swedish national bands, actually a band the Benny Andersson from ABBA. He
Yes.
played called Hep
Yes.
Star. I
Yes.
saw them when
Right.
I was there.
The Hep
And
Stars. Yes.
I didn't like them but when I saw them live, I couldn't. I had to, you know, I'd never seen a rock band like that live, and
Yeah.
they would jump up on the amplifiers and play, you know, simple.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. 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 What about Ola and the Janglers?
Ola and the Janglets. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't really hear it, but Ola, he later became a friend of mine, a good
Okay.
friend, and
Okay.
he helped me a lot with as a producer, and I helped him to doing some of his stuff
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
he would Secret Service. You know,
Okay.
did you know about that band?
Yeah.
No.
Yes. 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 I have. Yes, I have heard. Yes.
They were after ABBA in the 80s, the early 80s. They were the most successful Swedish band, but
Right.
that was
Right.
a really this kind of disco pop band
Yes.
when
Right.
synthesizers were becoming big.
Big.
And
Exactly.
they did that
Well.
big
Well. What.
music.
Well. What was the music scene around you? Let's say as a teenager around you at the
As
time.
a teenager, I was really interested in alternative jazz music. You know, uh, Eric Dolphy and all the big names. I saw Miles Davis,
I
1969.
was going to ask you about that. Okay. Okay. You
Way
did.
and Cecil Taylor was a great piano player. And maybe you don't know his name because he was playing a really avant-garde piano music. And I think Sarah Vaughan was on that concert too. And also the British, like Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, those bands I saw at that time. I even saw Purple in London when they were very new. At the Lyceum, a nice theater. At that time, I talk about that a lot with young musicians. They don't know that the way when rock music started, the British, you know the story about the Beatles going to Shea Stadium and they couldn't hear what they were playing.
They couldn't hear. No.
And they were given bigger amps by Vox, 100 watts, which they thought that would be sufficient. But they were singing through the local PA system, from the football stadium. They didn't have a proper PA. Anyhow, that happened. The amplifier, Marshall, of course, everybody.
Yeah.
And they became state of the art for the rock musicians, and you would have a 4 12-inch cabinet, double those with 100 watt on top, which and guitarists would have 2 of those stacks, which would mean 12 speakers. No, 16 speakers actually.
Yes.
12-inch speakers, and you would think that would be very bad for your hearing, but not. It spreads the sound in a very soft and nice way, because the amps were tube amps. And the PA system would be a very simple, like for the vocals and for the bass drum and an overhead with the drums. That's how I saw Led Zeppelin the first time at the Swedish, at Stockholm Concert House, which can take maybe 1,500, 2,000 people.
Okay.
And I remember as a teenager, I was not hip to a good sound. I didn't know what that was. Yeah. But I remember this sounds exactly like the record, but a little bit louder. It was really enjoyable sound. An ordinary concert house. Right. And I would say that would be the same thing with Deep Purple. Maybe they had a little bit more amps, but it was a great sound. And you could hear the vocals, you could hear the guitars, and what the musicians had behind them was what they heard. So they adjusted dynamically to each other. So you didn't need anybody's mixing the sound.
A mixing board, yeah. You didn't really need that. Right,
no,
right.
And the sound, I've never heard a better sound. Maybe I'm fabulous. Maybe I'm making this up. But it really was a great. And then when bigger PAs came around, you wouldn't need a big amp anymore. But if you have a 12-inch speaker, and then it kind of gets more screamy, the sound, and less pleasant. It doesn't spread as nice. And when it gets to full range PA system, you have all the top. You can really destroy the sound because you have so many possibilities.
I'm glad you're talking about this, because I like to hear the technical side, of music, and very few that I've talked to really go into that. So I'm glad you're talking. Yeah,
maybe that's so. And a lot of the big names, they have a lot of people hired to do everything. And I don't know, I was a great fan of Jeff Beck, and I got to see him like when he had been to Sweden in the 60s, and then he came back 2005 or something like that. That was the first time. And he had a terrible sound. As a young sound engineer, I'm a producer, so I've had a big studio, so I know everything about mixers. He had a Venue, which is a digital state-of-the-art mixer from DigiDesign. And I know the mixer. It's a great system, but you can also change the sound totally. And if you don't know what's going on, you can destroy it. And his sound was totally destroyed. This is almost 20 years, some 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And then I saw him 2 years ago with an older engineer having a different setup in a small place. Could take, maybe it was 1,500, 2,000 people at most in Stockholm again. And that sound was perfect. It was very loud, but it was great because you had a guy who could do that.
Yeah.
And not everybody can do that. You have a lot of educations and things, but you can't educate yourself to being a sound engineer. That's funny. You can learn how to twitch all the switch all the knobs and now know the technical part, but your ears needs 10,000 hours before they it's just like playing an instrument.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that too. It's really the, in the recordings, it's really the engineer that makes the difference, not the producer. A lot of times the producer, they just attach their name to the recording, but the engineer has everything to do with it. Yeah, having a good
I saw a concert with Lauryn Hill just a few years ago here in Stockholm too, and I'm really a fan of her. I think she's a great singer. Lauryn Hill of the
yes,
great soul singer, and she had a good band, but I mean the sound. She had some opening acts, and they sounded really quite okay. Nothing special. But when she came out, I don't know who she had doing the sound, but it was like it was so distorted, and it was so. I could stand 4 or 5 songs, and then I had to go.
yeah.
And that person totally ruined her concert.
Yeah.
And she can't hear that because on stage she has a different guy doing. She can have a perfect sound on stage, and the guy out there.
But what the audience hears is different. Yeah. Well, what about talk about your first band? Were you in a band before Samla Mammas Manna?
I had a trio. Yeah, I had a trio with some of my fellow school guys. Just when I moved to Uppsala, we started. I was studying, and I did 2 semesters in one. I was really studying hard, so I had a lot of free time. Started a band, and we played some kind of bluesy power trio type of music.
Okay.
It was just under my name.
Okay, similar to Cream, that kind of music.
We would have wished, but we weren't good. we weren't that good at that time. To be honest.
Well, I guess it doesn't translate real well. When I look up in Google Translate, Samla Mammas Manna, it says collect mother's bread. Well, maybe it does. Collect mother's manna from heaven.
Manna manna from heaven. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right, then it did translate. Okay. All right. Okay. I have to tell you, a week ago, I guess it was, I did an interview with a Welsh singer, and he sings only in Welsh. He only writes and sings in Welsh. So I had to do translate. Yeah, translate. Even though we have a common language, English, I had to translate a whole lot of that. So, well, the band was already going when you joined, right? They were already.
They had done one record. They had been going for 1 or 2 years. 1 or 2 years. I'm not sure. Yeah, it could have been.
Okay, what was the circumstances that led to you joining the band?
It was in the beginning of the 70s, end of the 60s, it was a very creative time for music. And you know, I live in Uppsala, which is a very old university town, and the music scene here was just really, really cooking. And I met the guys at a festival where I played with my trio, and I had a jam session with the drummer, and we started to collaborate, and and pretty soon I went out to see the other guys, and they were just a trio at that time.
Okay.
And and we clicked very well. We had the same kind of ideas about music, and about what music should be about, you know, sort of romantic, progressive ideas about everybody can play and blah blah blah. And we wanted to do we wanted to do music that hadn't been heard before. We thought,
Yeah.
well, you can never do that, but the energy between us was amazing at that time, I must say.
Okay.
And we had a great success everywhere, wherever we came to play live.
Okay. You guys clicked, and the chemistry was really, really good.
Yeah, people
You guys
really.
you did tour Sweden pretty heavily. Any memorable shows that you can remember?
Oh, we did a very nice tour together with a guy called Ron Giesen. He's in that box. It's a British guy. There was a Finnish promoter that thought, you know, Ron Giesen and Samla Mammas Manna, well, that would be the perfect match. So he booked us in Finland for a tour, and we really got together. And Ron Giesen was avant-garde solo artist. He would go out with a broken banjo, piano things, and he had background tapes, and he would play on anything and improvise and make a lot of jokes. It was quite funny. And he was a good friend of Roger Waters of Pink Floyd at that.
Pink Floyd. Okay, right.
And he
They
made
put together an album together, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. It called Music from the Body.
Right. Yes. Right.
And also, which I didn't know, because at that time I wasn't a big Pink Floyd fan, which might sound funny. I didn't dislike them. I just a few songs that I liked, but he made this. He produced this this Atom Mother's Heart.
Yes.
That record. Ron did. And anyhow, that we made some fantastic, nice shows together with him, and it was recorded by Swedish radio, which I brought to that compilation I did. And yeah, there's some great shows. We would take turns starting over the concerts, and people were laughing and having a good time, and so were we.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about, you know. I mean,
yeah.
You're enjoying it. The crowd's enjoying it. Well, on the first album that you played on, 1973's Maltid, is that right?
Maltid, yeah.
Okay, which translates to meal.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. First of all, I have to comment on the cover painting. I really like that artist. You can mention the artist's name because he did several covers.
Yeah. Tage Åsén is his name.
Okay.
And he's still alive, and he's still working a lot. He's incredibly producive. He produces a lot of all the time. He's a great guy. It's this kind of surrealistic.
Right. You know, and almost they're almost so real. I had to look really close at the cover to make sure it wasn't a photograph. It's just that realistic. Yeah. and his subjects that he puts in there are very, very interesting. Very
Yeah, it's always a little twist and a humor, and
right.
he's also very philosophical. He's a great guy. He's a good friend, actually.
Yeah,
So,
and again on your the other covers that I enjoyed were on your solo album, Nispolat.
yeah,
Okay, and Airborne. He did the covers for
yeah,
those.
right. He
Yeah,
does.
yeah.
Yeah,
You know that Speed Skater. I
yeah,
like that
yeah,
color,
yeah.
and it's snowing. Well, arguably, this album, Maltide, was the band's best album. And there are, lots of influences there. Frank Zappa to be one. Were you or the band Frank Zappa fans?
We were fans, but we never we never covered anything by him.
Yeah,
But we liked him. But maybe half of me and the drummer really liked him, and
yeah,
I think the piano player liked that.
yeah.
He liked some of it. Let's
Uh,
let's say maybe he was the strongest personality and the most creative of us in the band.
yeah,
But that record was something that all the four of us did most of the stuff together. So
right,
it's
right,
maybe
right.
that's why it sounds a little bit more versatile.
Versatile. And then of course it's got the jazz rock and folk, some folk stylings in there too.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a nice mixture. And again, lots of fans like this album. Uh,
Oh,
can you remember recording sessions?
yeah. I remember that very well. Um, that was in a studio called what was the name? I don't remember the name right now, but the engineer he was called Anders Lind, and he had just made a record with Bo Hansson. Do you
Yes,
know Bo
yes,
Hansson?
yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Bo Hansson really the most successful of us all because he sold a lot of albums. And Bo was in the studio at that time, and so we could borrow. He could afford expensive synthesizers and a mellotron and things like that. So he had all that, and we borrowed all his stuff, and he would come in and we would have a laugh and at that time maybe the whole thing was done in a week, in 5 days or so.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's how we worked. We would live in the rehearsal place and rehearse every day and make new
yeah.
songs and you know
Well, speaking of mellotron's always been one of my favorite instruments. And it's sad to hear, the passing of Michael Pender, Moody Blues.
yeah,
Yeah, because that's where I first heard it, I think, was the Moody Blues,
yeah,
using that. Yeah, yeah. And I like hear stories about how heavy that was. I mean, to move around. You
yeah,
wanted to get it in one place and not have to move it anymore because it was so enormous and
right,
heavy. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
Mellotrons and Hammond B3s, they
yeah,
were the heaviest.
that was heavy also. Yeah. You wanted to have some really buff roadies with you if you're going to move
Yeah,
those.
yeah,
Well,
really.
well, moving on to the next year, 1974's Here We Go Again. Closa, is it
Knap it
Kna?
off.
Cannot be trot. Cannot be trotted. Okay,
Yeah,
you say
that's a
okay.
crazy that's making joke of the political scene in the
Ah,
progressive music
okay.
because the proper word is krossa kapitalet.
Okay.
It's like a very leftish word for crush the capitalism.
Okay.
And we made a joke with that and just turn the words around.
Really? Well, I think it needs a revival today, because
Yeah,
I would be behind that. Let me just say that. I would be a
yeah,
proponent definitely
yeah,
of that. Very much so. Wow. Maybe that we'll see a revival and we'll start seeing those words again. Yeah, on this album, it was almost all instrumental on that
Yeah.
album. Yeah. Still jazzy, but with some Canterbury influences. Like
Yeah.
like Caravan, one of my favorite bands, Caravan, and a little
Oh,
soft machine, little soft
yeah.
machine. Yeah. Were you a proponent, like soft machine? And then also Gentle Giant. I hear a little bit of Gentle Giant. Gentle Giant.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, we listen to all of those. So
Oh,
they
okay.
probably they're in the back of your brain when you play, you hear
Right.
you make that tonality.
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's not a conscious effort. I know that, but you can't help your influences, They,
Exactly.
they'll come
Exactly.
out in the music. Yep.
Exactly.
Well, how did that album fare? How did that one go down with the fans?
I think we got some critique for some songs being too complicated, but that was the way it was. But
Yeah.
mostly we were very established at that time,
Okay.
and people liked the band. We had a good audience. We could make a good living on that, and touring. I think we could go on quite a lot. Then things started to develop. I think we met a guy with your name,
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Uh, he,
That was my
he was
next
a
comment.
friend.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
a friend of
Yeah.
us. So
And
I
you,
don't know how, but we had gone. We moved to a different rehearsal space. I remember, and that had always been a tension between the drummer and the piano player, Hasse Brunius and Lars Holmen, and that kind of started during that period, I think.
okay. So
Yeah,
he was an American, had relocated to Sweden. Is that right?
exactly.
Okay, he's working in Sweden. Greg Fitzpatrick is who we're talking
Yeah,
about. And
yeah.
I have reached out to him too. So I don't know
Okay.
if you're still in touch with him or not.
I
But
haven't heard from him for a while. He had a project online,
mhm,
doing music with friends, duo things. He
okay,
he he composed a song every day. That was during COVID. Yeah,
COVID. Okay.
maybe it's different now.
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to him after this one, after we post this one, and say, hey, guess who I talked to? And sometimes that helps. But
Yeah,
on this album, say the 76 album with Greg, pronounce that again.
uh,
Symphony.
Snorungarnas symfoni.
Okay. Okay.
Snorungarna. It's more called Snorri Noses Kids.
Okay. That's a mouthful. That
Yeah.
anyway, anyway, on this one, only 4 tracks on this one.
Mm.
So long tracks on
Yeah.
this one. And again, they were written by Greg, right? All the
They were
material.
all written by Greg, right?
Okay. Okay.
And
Okay.
he was part of producing it. That was like a proper production in a bigger studio.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
this was
he also added some brass,
brass
horn and
section.
trumpet.
Okay. Well, this one turned out to be a little more of a traditional kind of prog album, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and parts reminded me of you're familiar with Camel, right?
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, the Snow Goose, one of my favorite albums. Um, and parts of it remind me of that. So how did you guys feel about the product and how it turned out?
Uh, if if you have time, you could try to find on YouTube. There is somebody recorded it when we were just a quartet,
Okay.
just the four of us live, the whole thing, and that's we played it a couple of times, and I enjoyed that
Yeah.
because it was like a whole hour, now 45 minutes or something of music, and we did it. I thought it sounded better as
Ah,
a rock band instead
yeah,
of with all the horns and kind of, you know, studio.
right. So
It became a
maybe,
little bit tamer.
maybe the studio was a little overproduced, maybe, or
I think so. I think so. Greg wanted to do too much of it.
sometimes
He-
that's not a good thing. You know, I like
he-
I like the recordings from bands that are done more live. You know what I mean? Like in maybe one take or two takes. Not
yeah.
sometimes if you do too many and you overdub and all this stuff, it just kind of muddles
Mm,
it a little. Yeah, yeah,
mm.
yeah. That's just me.
And
Go ahead. Go ahead.
that was the last one I did. We had
Yes.
we had then gone to Finland quite a few times, and I had made contact with Finnish musicians, especially great bass player Pekka Pohjola. I don't know if you heard of him.
Oh, oh yes. Oh yes. Didn't he play in Wigwam?
Yeah, he played in Wigwam. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
and
I like that. I like that band. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I liked them a lot, and I was friends with all of them, and I played on Pekka's one of his solo albums at that time called Harrakka Pialoipukko. And then then we started a band, me and Pekka and two other guys, with Jukka Gustafsson, who played the organs of Wigwam
Yeah.
and had a fantastic voice. I don't know if you ever heard him sing.
I.
He would sound a little bit like Stevie Wonder or somebody like that,
Oh
or
wow.
Stevie Winwood, and
Yeah.
sing very complicated songs, but with that soul type of voice. It's really great.
Yeah.
And
Who is
and
that
then
again? What's the guy's name again?
the guy's name is Jukka Gustafsson.
Okay. And he has had a really good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
He was part of Wigwam, and there was a period where he wrote quite a few songs. You should
Yeah.
check that out if you can. It's
I will.
some of
You,
the
you,
best compositions.
you know, that's another one. I have not done any interviews with any Finnish
Oh,
musicians. So if you have any connection there,
I
yeah,
do. I
yeah,
do.
yeah, that would be wonderful. They had a British vocalist for a while, Jim Pembroke,
In Canberra,
and
yeah.
yeah, yeah, in Wigwam. So
That's who I joined after I left Samla. I went to record a record with Jim
Jim, okay.
called Corporal Cauliflower.
I like that.
He wrote some crazy lyrics and really nice songs, pop
Yeah,
songs, I would say, pop rock songs
yeah, yeah,
with a twist, you know.
yeah. Well, that was one of the things too, and with the time that you were with Samla Mammas Manna, that you guys interjected the humor into
Yeah,
the too.
yeah,
You did that quite a bit.
that was a
Yeah,
big part.
big part of that too. Well, uh, talk about how you started working with Yuka.
Well, it was after I left Samla, I I I I wanted to work with Pekka and Jukka and the drummer of Jukka's old band, Tassavallan President Vesa Altonen. We had a band, but at that time, then I went to Finland to record with Jim Pembroke. That took quite a long time. So when I was in Helsinki and rehearsing for the record, I met Jukka again because we knew each other. We had met on the road, and he had split from his original band and had put together a jam band. And he said, "You know, I'm playing in this club tonight. Why don't you come by and bring the guitar?" And I did, and we had a jam session, and everybody loved it. It was one of those moments where you have this chemistry,
Yeah,
and I said, let's do this again in Stockholm. And at that time, our names were quite big at that time. So in Stockholm, the club, it was we weren't prepared for it. It was so people were lining up for there was so many people coming to see us, and we thought, why don't we continue this? And that's how it started. It was so successful from the very first moment.
Right. I was going to say you guys must have enjoyed some kind of chemistry together, and to work so
Yeah,
long together. Yeah, working
yeah,
so well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It was great playing with Jukka. He is and was a fantastic musician. He's also a very good piano player, which nobody knows.
Ah, no, I didn't realize that. Okay,
No.
okay. Did you guys try to interject some of that, or was you were just playing
Yeah,
guitars?
yeah. Actually, Jukka is a guy of he's very humble. And we were doing a record where we had a guest keyboardist
Uh-huh.
called Joachim Kuhn. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was a big name in Europe at that time, doing solo concert in jazz places, and he was also playing with Billy Cobham and other names in LA. And he was a great player, and there was a tune that Jukka wrote that had a really long, uh, very difficult piano part, along with the guitar. And Kuhn thought, that would be. I would rather not play that because it would take me a lot of time to rehearse it. And then you can say, "Oh, fine, okay, I'll do it." And he sat down playing the grand piano, and everybody was, "What the fuck?" It was really he played it so well, and it was a very complicated, long line.
Yeah.
It's on that record. I don't remember the Space Cookie is the name of the tune.
Oh,
Space
okay.
Cookie on a
Okay.
on a record 79. That's from 79. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, you guys had several albums together with the full band backing.
yeah,
And then you had a couple of acoustic albums. Did you
yeah.
enjoy the electric or the acoustic
It,
playing?
it was the same. We introduced the acoustic thing when we were playing as a band. We just thought that would be a nice break in the
Mhm.
middle of the show with a lot of uh, heavy electronics, and then we would just come out and play
Okay,
our
okay.
acoustic set, and that was very successful. So we continued that and made 2 records.
Yes, yes, of the acoustic style. Well,
Yeah.
of your moving on to your solo albums, I tend to like your first. Oh,
Sorry
go
if we.
ahead.
Yeah,
No, that's fine.
we actually also did
Go ahead.
uh, I did a duo album with Stefan Nilsson where we
Yes.
invited Jukka as a guest. That's
Okay.
also a record. I don't know. It's called Vänspel. I don't
I'm
know if
glad
you.
you brought that up because I mentioned in the intro about Stefan. I'm glad you
Yeah,
brought that. Okay. So you worked together with him, the three of
yeah,
you. Okay.
yeah. And that's a record that I have the rights to. So I'm planning to release it now because it's not on Spotify or any
Okay.
digital platform. So I'm thinking to
Now's a,
to yeah
now's a good
put
time. Well, I'm sure a lot of the fans would appreciate that. People that have been following you too. Well, did of your solo albums, I tend to like the first one, the aforementioned Nispala. I tend to like that one the best. Kind of jazz fusion with it kind of has a Latin feel to it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Is that
I'm
what you were
into
going
that.
for? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm
But
into that.
yeah, it makes me want to put on my skates. Go
Yeah,
get out there
right,
on the ice. Uh,
right.
well, when did you play? I don't know if this is a good time to put this in. I guess it is. I tried to do this time-wise, but when did you play in the band Ramlosa Kvalar? Kvalar.
Yeah, that was parallel with all of this,
Okay.
maybe 77 or something
Okay.
and onward. So 76. I bought a bouzouki from a
Ah,
British guy who lives here, and he was in Greece taking lessons from some really legendary bouzouki player who started this very famous well, this big Greek music scene, it's a style, it's called rebetika. Everybody knows it in Greece. It's like a couple of thousand songs. It's like the blues,
Oh,
Greek blues. It's big city music, started in the tavernas. The lyrics are a little bit like blues. You're on a station and you're leaving your love behind, and you're moody and everything is blah blah blah. And
uh-huh, uh-huh.
lot of alcohol and drugs and all that,
Right.
which they sure do in Greece as well as everywhere.
Right.
Yeah,
But
and
it's interesting. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
it's not like folk music. It's a big city thing. And
Yeah.
he took lessons from a man who started this in the early 1920s,
Mhm.
and he was in his 70s at that, and he bought two bouzoukis, and he didn't need the other one, so I bought it from him. And
Oh,
then we started to play music from the Balkans and everywhere. What you would call ethnic or word music today.
right. There you go. I like that traditional
Yeah,
folk music. Yeah, I like that, and then you kind of put your own spin on it. A
yeah,
little bit.
yeah.
Yeah,
We did. At that time, it was hard to find. Big record companies though would have an ethnic department. Even like Warner Brothers, they would go to India and Africa and exotic places and record music.
right, right.
So, but then it was hard to get a lot of it. You got a few of
Yeah,
those.
right.
That's
Yeah, even going back to here in America, Alan Lomax, who
yeah,
went out and did those field recordings, you know.
yeah.
I mean, going back to the real roots, that's fascinating. That
It
you know to,
is.
to see where music came from and where it is, and
Yeah.
the connections. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You can follow food tradition and music tradition. They kind of go together.
right,
Uh,
right, right.
Especially around the Mediterranean, you find all the influences. It's so nice. If you go there and meet local musicians, you can play with everybody. If you have the key,
Uh-huh.
like play blues. You know the blues
Yeah,
scale. You can play blues with anybody, everywhere.
right.
In the Middle East and around the Mediterranean, if you know something called Hijaz, have you heard of that about that?
No, what is
Hijaz
that?
is a scale.
Okay,
It's a scale. I'll play it for you.
okay, okay. Sure. Okay, scale. Okay, okay. I, I'm not so sure how that's coming across. Sometimes in Zoom, the music doesn't
It'll
translate
sound
very.
terrible. But you got a little bit
But
idea.
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're
Yeah.
talking. Yeah.
And that scale, if you depending on which chord you start on, is the basic elements of flamenco music, gypsy
Ah,
in Spain, and if you go to Balkan and Russia and Finland, and how the music came from Finland over to Sweden, how everything interact, it's
yeah,
the same. It's the
yeah.
same the basic scale, but
Right,
different, starting on different parts, on different chords. Now it
right.
gets a bit technical, but that's very interesting. So you can, like, I have a Turkish friend who played me some music from the Black Sea in Turkey.
Hmm.
The other side of Ukraine,
Yeah, yeah.
and it sounded exactly like some Finnish music.
Right,
Music from
right.
Finland. 100% was
Yeah,
Finland. Oh, that
yeah,
was
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. You know what? You just hit on the point that I was going to say that, once you get to the roots, it's how so much of the roots music sounds the same, like you said, from all over the
Yeah.
world, and it kind of shows that we are one people, really. And we just kind
Definitely,
of moved in different directions and relocated and,
definitely,
populated the world. Yeah. Yeah. So
100%.
it's really fascinating to study that and go back and listen to those roots. Well,
And And
Go ahead.
the different parts have their own accents. You know,
Yes.
like you
Right.
have your flavors here, but you find the same rhythms and you find the same scale, but different licks and
Yeah.
how you form that scale. That makes it sound. Oh, you can hear that. It's, oh, this sounds like Greek, and this sounds like
Uh-huh.
coming from
Uh-huh.
a.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, the one of the guys I talked to recently, they used a recorder, you know, their instrument, the recorder. And
Yeah,
the way they used it, I said, that sounds Greek to me. I mean, not, the phrase Greek means I don't know what it means. That's not what I meant. I meant it sounds like it's from Greece,
yeah,
Greek music. And he
yeah,
said, no, we weren't going for that, but it did sound Greek like that. So
yeah.
it was interesting, you know. Um, well, you also played in here we go again, De Gladys Capel.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Releasing an album at the end of '78. Again,
Yeah,
jazz fusion. It reminds me of Brand X. You familiar with Brand X?
yeah.
Was Phil
Um,
Collins the band he was in before Genesis? Yeah,
Hey,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I didn't think about it as that because that was the songs by Stefan. We
Okay,
wanted to, we formed a band. Stefan and George played with me on my solo album, my songs,
yeah.
and then we made quite a few gigs for some years, and then we wanted to record Stefan's songs. That's why we did that album, and it was done
Ah,
in 1 day. The
really?
whole 1 day,
That
yeah.
that fast? Wow,
Yeah.
wow. Did you feel did you
I
feel like
made competitions actually.
did you feel like it was finished, or do you ever think we should have gone back and done
No,
this?
no, I
Okay.
thought that was one of my favorite recordings actually because it
Yeah,
was so easy to play with them. You know, if as a soloist, you're not better than your backings,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they really made me sound good and vice versa. Wow, that was great.
Yes, yes. It all intertwines. You're right.
Yeah,
You've got to work well together. Well,
yeah,
how about Michael Rickfors?
yeah,
Uh,
Michael.
I didn't realize that. He was in the Hollies for a couple of years. Wow.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, yeah. When did you work with Michael?
That must have been 10 years ago, and we also did some stuff in the 80s, 90s, or something like that.
Okay.
Some recordings. I had a studio with a well-known Swedish producer at that from the 60s called Henkan Anders Henriksen, and he had all these connections with the commercial side of the music, and Rickfors was one of those, and he made a record. That must have been 2010. Yeah, that I recorded some of the songs and I mixed and mastered the whole record, I think.
Okay. Were you pleased with the outcome of that one, working with him?
Yeah, that was nice. But Michael never is never satisfied, and he's a gloomy guy.
He's one of those.
Yeah, he's a gloomy guy, but he's a great singer. He's got a fantastic voice, and he writes some nice sort of middle of the road rock songs.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah,
Yeah. Well,
no,
well,
that was okay. That was more like a production kind of,
okay. More production.
service.
Okay.
Service. It's not on equal base, I think. We were
Okay.
friends, but he's a big name in Sweden because he had some really big, huge hits,
Right.
major hits. So he was trying to maintain that. When we did this album, he had a song on the Swedish part of the Eurovision Song Contest,
Okay. Okay.
and he wanted the record companies were on him, and he made a totally different album from the song that he was performing.
Uh,
So I think
okay.
he was not in phase with the times.
Right. 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 Okay,
with
gotcha.
the commercial things going on.
Yeah, that's a good way. Good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what led up to the reunion of Samla Mammas Manna in what 1990?
It was the drummer's 40th birthday.
Okay.
We
Okay.
had a like party for him,
Okay.
and everybody thought it was so fun. So we continued.
Okay. Was
And
it like
during
a concert, a gig that you played? You guys
a
showed?
concert here in Uppsala,
Okay. And
and
it's good turnout. Good turnout.
yeah, very very nice. And we got a lot of. That was actually when the internet was starting, in the
Oh,
mid 90s.
yeah. Yep.
We were getting a lot of offers from people everywhere. And we what did you know? How did you know about us? Yeah, I don't know. It was like that. The Samla Mammas Manna is a band that kind of appeals to young people still.
Right.
I noticed when we did some of our early gigs, there was some teenagers coming from like way far. They had listened to it because somehow there is a very childish and not very sort of we don't have a professional attitude when we play, and still the music is quite advanced, so you can listen to it in many different ways. It
Yeah.
doesn't have we're an established and we're very professional, we're so good, blah blah blah. No, not at all. So it kind of appeals to a lot of young people. I noticed we had
Yeah.
a lot of the young people asking for us on festivals, places everywhere. So we played a lot in the 90s.
Well, I think that's good. I mean, because you kind of broaden your appeal. The older people that like it and the
Mm,
younger. Kind of you bridge that generation gap a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was fun.
So you still playing with them or no? No.
So what happened? The drummer then got mad at us for a lot of variety of reasons when we made our last real studio album in
Okay.
1999,
Okay.
2000, in 2000. And to make cut a long story short, he left the band, and we got a new drummer from Japan
Okay.
because people had come to us to see us here in Sweden from Japan, a record company, and some other people, and they really wanted to bring us over to Japan and blah blah blah. And first Lars went because the band wasn't on at that time. And then he's like, we got to go there. It's so fun.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
found this guy, this is a crazy drummer. He would be perfect for us. Okay, why not? And it was Tatsuya Yoshida. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Okay. Okay. Well, I was going to ask you about that, about playing in Japan.
Yeah.
Talk about the audience because I've heard stories playing
So
in Japan.
so this is the progressive audience. We played with so Tatsuya Yoshida had a duo called the Ruins, which is really like a Frank Zappa on acid and Frank Zappa doing more pop. Just a
Yeah.
duo,
Uh-huh.
very complicated, but still very short songs and crazy and very humorous.
Yeah.
It's like samurai rock and roll.
Samurai, I like that.
Yeah, and he's a fantastic drummer, great drummer. And he's invited to a lot of big scenes just to do his solo thing. But he had a bass player who they were the Ruins, and we played with them here in Uppsala. Invited them, and then invited him to our band, and he brought us over to Japan. So the scene there was very much his audience, the progressive people in Tokyo, and also the psychedelic part. That there's a band called Acid Mothers or something like that, Japanese guys with long hair looking like hippies,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in the 2000s. And they were fun, and we toured with them. We played different places, and the audience loved us. We had great success, but it's a long way to go to play, you know.
Right. Yes, it is. Yes, it
So
is.
then anyhow, together with Yoshida, we did some really amazing, nice, weird, funny places where we played.
Yeah, yeah.
Both in
Speaking
Japan
of,
and in Russia. In Russia, we played at the very North Sea, you know, Barents Sea,
okay,
on
okay,
Novaya Zemlya. It's like as far north as you can get if you go
right.
uh, uh, if you go to Arkhangelsk to the White Sea, and then it's like 2 hours of riding with a plane,
Wow.
straight east northeast,
Yeah.
and it was a small place called Narian Mar, and it was a crazy guy from France and his Finnish wife who put together an avant-garde concert in a little village there, which was the center of the original people called the Nenets,
Oh,
which
okay.
which are definitely related to the Swedish Laponians. If you,
Oh, okay.
yeah, indigenous people
Yeah.
in Sweden, because but there in where we played in Russia, there they looked, you know, just like Asian people, black hair and or like you would think Inuits but they had
Yes.
exactly the same color on the traditional clothing as our
Mm-hmm.
Laponians, our
Uh-huh.
indigenous.
Yeah.
But here the Laponians are so mixed with Swedish people, but they still
Right.
have the language and the culture and the clothing with really powerful colors like blue, green, yellow, and red,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
exactly the same. And it was
Wow.
weird. It's so far away.
Yeah.
I told some people here they didn't know about them,
Mhm.
and they lived traditionally. This is
Oh,
2003 that we were up there.
you were
It was a
there.
fantastic concert to have in this little village
Yeah.
with a lot of other weird artists, like for instance 3 ladies from Morocco. They were
Oh,
sing traditional Moroccan music, and they were so good.
yeah. Yes.
And they had never seen anything like that. The teenagers had never heard a live rock band before.
Yeah.
We became, you know, they came up to me and they thought, wow. You know, teenagers inviting me, you know, at that time I was 50, maybe 45, 50, to their home. It was really good. And I couldn't resist because, you know, they'd never seen a rock band. They'd never
Yeah.
seen it. I had so much to tell and talk about, blah, blah, blah. You know, when you're a
Yeah.
teenager, you see, you know, as you were telling me, what was
Right.
your first impression? That was
Yeah.
like for them. I never heard
Yeah.
it.
Exactly. It was a truly a cultural experience for both, for you and the
Yeah,
audience.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
I'm sure they were very hungry for that type, music that they,
I was hanging out with the teenagers and the rest of the band. Everything. The city, you know, politician. They were
managers.
having a party for everybody, and I
Yeah.
went with the teenagers. You know, the father was looking at me. Ooh, who's this? That.
Yeah,
Ooh, that was
that's
funny.
funny. That's funny. Look,
Just because
my hands,
they had
yeah,
all
my
this
hands are up
melancholy.
here. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, that's interesting. Again about the teenagers. I think in a way that keeps you young, right? I
yeah,
mean, yeah, being in touch with the younger people like that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, something.
I have that. There's a fantastic school here. It's called the cultural school. It's all over. It's like an old tradition from the Social Democrats,
Yeah,
and it's like for everybody can attend. It
yeah,
costs hardly nothing, and if you're between 8 and 19, you can go and learn an instrument. and you can meet a grown-up for 20 minutes and have a good conversation and a good education, which is different. Like if you have a whole class, you don't learn very much. I have that too.
No.
But I've started, you know, I've started a girl band, rock band. I had them since they were 10, and now they're 15, turning 16, and they became really good just because they had the opportunity.
Right.
And they were the right people to start it. They were great, bright girls. They're doing well in school and everything. And this is that really, I can see that saved their whole, you know, puberty. You know, when you go to through all those kind of hard years for some, but they had each other. They had the band, and they really they spent quite a few hours every week.
Right. You know,
And
I think
now we're recording a song that they wrote, the first one. So
I think it's so true. Like you said, music is so powerful. You know, it has healing power, therapy. It ministers to people. I think it's the highest art form, personally.
Yeah.
But you know, in general, music. My son is in choir. And they talk about how kids that are in choir, well, he's a senior, he's getting ready to graduate high school, but he's been in it for 4 years. And they talk about kids that are in choir, how they excel in their GPA, they're in school and everything like that. You know, it just shows you the power of music, you know, and they're a group. They work together and they have each other. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, music is the art form that uses both brains at the same time.
Right.
Sides of the brain. And that really helps when you then need to concentrate and do cognitive things like reading and counting, whatever. So everybody who can focus and stay on the music track, they benefit from it a lot.
Yes.
I've seen that. I've only worked as a teacher for like the last 6 years. When people retire, I started to work. I really enjoy it because they are my friends. You know, these kids. So I can really see that I have a few groups that I started and quite a few solo pupils, so to say, to come one on one.
Right.
And I see that from day to day.
And it's nice to hear them come back to you, right? I'm sure, and say what a difference you've made, and then, you know, helping them, you know, on that track, you know, touching them and helping them to go down the right, you know, the musical path, as it were.
And also because I'm not a teacher, and I haven't gone through this formative way of teaching.
Right.
So I'm working with them as if they were my fellow musicians. And which is actually superior to the other side, because they learn. They actually learn the songs and they have fun. I can see that. And I also see very clearly when, oh, this is too much. They can't take anymore now. So I really, you know, keep them interested all the time.
Yeah.
And
well, and talking to Ivo, the professor of viola that I mentioned, he echoes the same sentiment, you know, and he gets the one-on-one with them. He has small classes, but then he also has the one-on-one, you know, and he can just see the progression, you know, and how they're learning, you know, just hands-on.
It's amazing. And when you're young, it goes so quick.
Right. That's what they say about the younger you are, the little young kids that they can learn so many different languages before they reach a certain age, you know?
Yes.
And once you get to a certain age, your mind and everything has kind of been biased, and you have these, you know, predilections, but, you know, you can absorb so much more, you know, at a very early age, you know. But we'll talk about a couple other things that I wanted to talk about how did you get involved in composing music for TV and film?
That was because my friend George Vedenius, he moved back to the States, to New York, and started to do the same thing there. You know, he did a lot of session work, and he joined the Saturday Night Live band, and he couldn't go over to Sweden and do his. He had done music with a film company called Poi Film, and they had a lot of. They were first on digital graphics. So I made a lot of music for them because George recommended me. He said, "Use this guy," and that's how it started, and it spread quite fast. This was in the 80s, and I also had a friends on Swedish radio. The saxophone player who played with Jukka, he was the head of one of the big channels, national radio, and so the people at the Swedish radio knew me, and when they were going to do one of the big changes, you know, organization wise, in the Swedish radio, that they needed an audio trademark, so to say.
Okay.
I made that in the early 80s one, and it was a very famous program, and everybody knew it, and that's how it's really but you have to be at the right place
The right
at the
time.
yeah.
Uh-huh. A lot of it's luck, right? A lot of it, yeah.
And it happened that I got my first child then, and I thought it was good not to tour anymore, and I could do that.
Well, speaking of, it's a nice segue. Speaking of first child, it must have been interesting writing the music for a photographer, Leonard Nilsson's
Yeah,
film,
yeah,
Miracle of Life. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yes.
That's great.
Made that connection there. Yeah. Because that's been shown on public broadcasting here, you know, probably all over the world. That
All over the world, actually.
yeah,
Yeah. And he was huge.
yeah.
Everybody opened the doors to him, you know, all the uh, different scientists everywhere. He could use the latest technique and take all these amazing pictures.
Right. Wow. We'll talk about being a technician for the world's first live 3D film and surround sound.
Oh, did you hear about that too?
I do a little research.
That was fun. That was a lot of fun. It's a crazy guy called Michael Katsev who organized the whole thing, and he got sponsored by Sony because the 3D cameras weren't. This is 2010. And technically it's a long time, but they had all the cameras. Nobody knew how to make the sound, so I had to. There were Yamaha had some mixers, and some of the digital mixers had a lot of possibilities to do surroundings, but I had to both record 5.1 and then send it directly at the same time. So there is a German monitor controller that I happen to own one, which is very small and simple. It has double those outputs. So you need like 6 outputs for the recording and six for the live feed. So we were feeding. This was an opera called Faust.
Okay.
Very famous opera, and it was in a small opera place, and they had done the whole thing in different, a stage above the stage which is really challenging with microphone to hear the orchestra. So I had access to a lot of fantastic technique, so I could do what I wanted. And yeah, the sound turned out very well in the movie plays, the direct, the live view. It was, that was great. Then, unfortunately, this is a crazy thing. This is a very technical thing. But Apple has, you know, the guy who then edited the whole thing in Final Cut at that time. He took the music and something happened on the master when it was put into a cinema, an ordinary cinema, where you make this digital master.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar. This is very complicated stuff. Anyhow, Apple has a funny thing. It's called core audio. Did you know that? Do you have
Core.
Apple? You have PC?
Yeah.
You're running
I don't
Windows.
I don't have an Apple, but
Now,
I can follow you.
That's something called core audio, and
Okay.
and it had a funny thing. This was really something seriously wrong with it. If you used Apple's, as I used Logic, and he used Final Cut, I gave him the master, which is 6 separate full range audio files, you know, 48 kilohertz and 24-bit audio. So you have 6 of them. And what Apple's apps, they just put it together like one mono.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded terrible in the movie, in
Yeah.
the movie theater. And nobody understood what it was until I took it over to a different app. Yeah, I used Digidesign Pro Tools. It didn't do that.
Okay.
So funny enough. But anyhow, so as you can hear, there's a lot of technical bullshit.
It's not bullshit.
That's what happened. we managed to do that, and it had never been done, and you would have to when you send it all these amounts of data, you need a good digital connection, you know, which would be fiber, and still you would have to slow the music a little bit, because the amount of data on the movie part, the 3D films, were so much slower, so fast, so much. So we had to slow that, and I had to have a guy at the movie theater where it was supposed to be, where it was broadcasted live, to say, you know, can you add a little bit more, a few milliseconds more here. Now they're in sync, and that's how we did it. It was kind of crazy.
Is that wild? That's wild. Well, see, I know a lot of the viewers that are technophiles will appreciate you going into that, you know, and explaining that. Was it shown at? Are you familiar with the Omni theaters? You know, where it's got the sensor around and the seats lean back.
It was shown in a famous. It's called the House of Films, which is a school and a famous big studios, and it was local politicians came to see it. You know, the Minister of Cultural Affairs. They all came down there because it was like a big thing at that time.
Okay.
So also seeing this opera, and they could hear it in surround, and it was a success. Unfortunately, when we put it together as a package, this was the live thing, and that, which is the most difficult thing. Then packaging is, because of Apple's crazy idea. They have this core audio, which is the main engine of all sounds in Apple, and that didn't, that it wasn't up to date.
Okay, yeah. That's
I
interesting.
found that out talking to another film sound editor
Yeah.
who had done that a lot, and he said, I found that, and if I would have known it, we could have gone around it, but
Uh,
we blew
you did,
it.
you didn't know that at the time. Yeah, you didn't know
No,
that.
no, it was like a mysterious mystery.
Wow.
How could this be? Because
Well, well,
I had advice.
being yeah, being so technically inclined yourself, when did you build or have your own recording studio?
Oh,
Uh,
when I made this first album, Nyspolat,
oh, okay.
I had bought a 4-track TIAC
Okay.
4-track recorder, which I did all my demos on that one. That's how you, as a guitarist at that time, I didn't play keyboard, so I could try all the chords and I could try all the, the arrangements.
Right, right. And you kind of have that control, like you said, you're doing it
Yeah,
and you don't have to rely on other people or you have to pay fees to use their studio and you have your own. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I what was that? That was yeah, in the early 80s, when late 70s, when we played with Jukka Tolonen, our saxophone player quit, and I
Mhm.
thought, okay, why don't I get a synthesizer guitar? Because 2 guitars, it gets boring. Let's have some different sounds.
Mhm.
So I contacted Roland,
Ah,
which they had their main office in Denmark, and they said, yeah, fine, here you have, take them. And I got quite I could get whatever I wanted. So then I got into synthesizers, and I, I I bought a piano. I started to play piano, and I got a sponsorship by Roland, so I had all their new equipment.
okay. Okay. Well, we'll talk
Yeah.
about going from guitar, once you've mastered that to piano. Was it a learning curve going to learn the piano or once you
Yeah.
know the keys and
Yes,
chords?
yes,
Yeah.
it took some time. It took
Yeah.
some time, but then when I stopped touring, I played maybe even more keyboard than guitar,
Yeah.
and my colleague, he was a great piano player, classically trained, and I learned so much just by sitting next to him and doing so many different types of music,
Yeah.
like when you work with film, radio, TV, whatever. So we did all kinds of music that you can dream of, like from operas to like Swedish dance bands or heavy metal, whatever,
Wow.
jazz.
Very versatile. Yeah.
Yeah, that
Well,
was cool. I didn't realize until I quit that, when I was
uh,
doing my music, and it's okay, I can do this, I do
yeah, yeah.
that. So it kind of glued me.
Right, right.
My
You didn't get stuck in one place. Yeah,
no,
exactly. Exactly. No, no.
no.
Well, this is what I wanted to talk about. One more thing about your 2013. You released that mammoth box set of 1970s alternative Swedish music. 40 CDs, is that right? 40?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. From
38
83 bands
hours of music.
and 38 hours. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
And say the name of it,
yeah, yeah.
Progladen. Yeah, yeah,
Proglodan, yeah,
Progladen.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
The
what
prog
prompted
box.
what? Okay, what
It was
prompted
in
you to
English.
do? What prompted you to do this and do all that
I
research?
got
And,
they contacted me on Sweden National Radio.
okay,
They wanted to do a smaller, like 4 or 5 CDs,
yeah,
and I said fine, yeah, and then they let me into the archives, and I was just finding more and more, and I
yeah,
said, why don't we do a little bit bigger? Yeah, why not? So they said, and I
yeah,
after 4 years I was finished.
right. You were like a kid in a candy store, huh? Like,
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
right, I would be.
yeah.
Uh, wow. Wow. Well, that must. So how long did you say that took to put together?
It took 4 years. Choosing them and then mastering. I also did a simple, easy mastering.
Yeah.
Because they had never been put on a. At that time, it was still CDs that we thought.
Yeah.
But that soon went out. But we sold 1,000 the 1,000 boxes we made, which is 40,000 CDs. So
Wow.
quite a short time.
was
And
gonna say-
I didn't want to, because everything was changing. I didn't dare to print new ones,
Right. Right.
because CD, who nobody has a CD player anymore.
I do. I still. It's one that's connected to my laptop. It's in here,
Yeah.
so and it still works. It still works. But
Yeah.
that would be fascinating. I would love to hear some of the music off of that. Those.
Yeah, it's
of
on
course.
Spotify. It's
Okay.
on Spotify.
It's on Spotify. Okay, I'll definitely check that out. Yeah, because that's how.
Unfortunately, it's not well organized there. So I'm trying to get back to the guy who put it out.
Okay.
There's a old record company boss from Virgin Music here. He's got a nice connection with the Orchid, which is Sony Music, I think, American.
Oh, okay.
So it's distributed via them, and it's not at all. I'll show it to you.
Okay.
This is the only box.
Oh my! Oh, talk about
And,
yeah. I knew
this.
it had to be. Yeah,
And it's like this.
big.
And it's all in.
Wow.
They're all handmade
Yes.
records, and they
Right.
all
That's.
have different.
I've never seen one that big, but I bought a couple of those, the box sets. It's like one of those, like you're holding one. It's like that big, right?
I have 4.
Right. And I have one with Asian music from the late 60s, 70s, and then I have one from South African rock bands from the 60s. I have that one too. So yeah, and it's got about 6 CDs in there, not anywhere close to 40.
No.
But yeah, those box sets.
Me and my colleague during the 90s, we had a lot of collaborations with record companies, and we were having our studio close to EMI, and they then had the Beatles, and they put out this Beatles box.
Yes.
Have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
It's very nice. It's like a wooden thing, like a bread box or something. With all
yes, I have seen that one. Yes,
everything.
You're right. Well, that's how I found out about a lot of bands, is through those compilations like that.
Yeah.
Nothing as extensive as that, but yeah, I pick up on a lot of. That's how I find out. Yeah, hear about a lot of these. Well, Costa, in kind of coming to a close here, anything else that you'd like to mention or talk about or plug or?
Well, the 2 records I made, 2006, 2008, they were very successful for me. Not when sale wise, but I got very, very good reviews, especially from the one called Rites of Passage.
Rites of Passage.
I don't know
right.
if you heard it.
Yes.
So that's something. Now in retrospect, I enjoyed that one maybe the most.
Okay. Okay. Did I have not? I'm looking. I thought I had notes about that. I guess I didn't get that down. Okay. Okay. But that's the one you're happy with and proud.
Yeah.
Passage.
And I also I have a trio with a fantastic guitar player. So we instead of hiring a bass player, we played bass ourselves. and we changed, you know, and then we thought, why don't we do a double neck guitar?
Okay.
And we had, that's fun. I show it to you.
All
And we
right.
had this one made.
Oh, wow. I like those. Oh, yeah. I always like to see those. I like when bands use them.
It's a
Yeah.
bass up here and a
Uh-huh.
guitar there.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
it's this, my friend Richard from
Yeah.
the great band November, he did it in 94. And we still play, and we did a record. We recorded, we do a lot of blues, you know, the way I started, as I told you,
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix. And I
Right.
didn't say that I traded my Bob Dylan record in the 60s for a blues album with, I think it was Memphis Slim. Yeah, it was Memphis Slim.
Memphis Slim.
You know, piano player,
Yeah.
a nice guitar player, and that's how I got into blues, and that's how I learned to play guitar really. So
Oh,
with this, we play a lot of blues, and we recorded a very nice set of music. I haven't released all of them, but there's a few of them on Spotify right now.
okay.
I call them the psychedelic series blue, different. And I also put a band together when we released this box.
Uh-huh.
So it's a mixture of like the Hall of Fame of Swedish prog musicians and my trio. So if you're interested, you can go and listen. They all have the same type of album cover with different colors. And this one, with the blues band, it's called Progressive Blue. With some
Okay.
of these old, you know, my favorite at that time was Peter Green, and
Oh, me too. Oh,
but
Peter
I
Green.
have
Yeah. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
recorded some of his songs. So
Uh-huh.
if
Yeah.
you want
Which
to
song?
hear
Which song did you, Peter Green?
Another Woman, and
Okay. Okay.
Oh Well,
Oh, yeah. Of course you got to do
and
that.
what else did we? And then I did some of my tunes
Yeah.
too.
I, I
And
love, yeah, I mean, I love his, how he can really jam, rock out on the blues tracks, but I like his like Man of the World and of course Albatross, like the
yeah,
mellower, yeah, those
yeah,
songs too. So,
that one I recorded also on this album, on this
uh-huh.
Airborne.
Yeah. Oh, Peter
You like the
Green.
cover?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Early Fleetwood Mac, yes. Oh yeah.
yeah,
Some of my
yeah.
favorite stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I can still when it comes to listening to guitar, I like, I play a lot. I play very complicated guitar styles, but that style with a nice tone, that's
Yes.
very, and simplicity of it. But
It
it
is. It is.
sounds simple, but it's not. It's like the touch you have. It's like, you
Yeah.
know, he had a very, very nice sound.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And sad that he's no longer with us too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, he did. You're very true. Well,
Well,
okay. Anything else? Like to,
no,
okay.
it's always too much. I've
I
had
know.
a
I
long
know.
life as a musician 50 years
I
ago.
know. I
Always,
know. Sometimes I get in too deep. I know. And it's like these turn out to be 2 hour interviews and stuff. And then you get, because today the people, they have such a short attention span. They
yeah,
can't sit and watch something that long. But you know what some people have done, and I found they've cut it up in segments. I know
yeah,
if you're good at that kind of thing. But I'm not going to limit it to 30 minutes or an hour. I'm not going to do that, because I want to hear the story, So if it
yeah,
happens to be an hour and a half, 2 hours, oh
yeah,
well, you know,
yeah,
maybe not everybody's going to watch it, but there are people that will,
yeah,
so,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
so sit
So,
down, you don't have to watch it all in one day,
mm, mm,
so there are always options
yeah,
for that. Get you some popcorn, like you're watching a movie,
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it has been very enjoyable, I gotta say. And Costa, I appreciate your, going back and reliving and recounting so many of those memories, and taking a trip in the time machine, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. It has
I
been
enjoyed
fun.
it.
Yeah, yeah, it has been. I appreciate it, and I will, get this edited a little bit. Shouldn't be too much. I don't want to edit out too much, But I'll send you the finished copy, and of course, I post it on my channel. But you're welcome to post it wherever you like, on your Facebook or social media and all that, and be sure, yeah, put in a good word, and
Yeah,
let me know if any you'd like to refer, or talk to anybody, because I'm willing to talk to more people, like I said, from your side of the world, and all
yeah.
over,
I,
so
I'll definitely talk to Richard, and
yeah,
you should talk to
yeah.
him.
Oh yeah.
Great,
That
great
sounds
guy.
great. That sounds great. All righty. Well, your weekend's almost over now.
Yeah.
It is. It's
Tomorrow,
my 12 o'clock. So
tomorrow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's another Monday. Okay. All righty. All right, Costa. I do
Hey,
appreciate it. And all
take
all the
care.
best. All the best to
Yeah.
you. Okay. All
All the
right.
best for you too.
All right.
Take care, girl. Bye.